absence of time, I think we're going to get started. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Benno Michel, who will kick us off today.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Benno Michel, a board member of the American Friends of the Hebrew University. I thank you for joining us today to learn more about a project that's really exciting from the Hebrew University that my wife and I and some of our friends are supporting. Before we begin some housekeeping, I would like to remind everyone to mute their speakers. There will be time for questions toward the end of the program. Please raise your hand or type the question in the chat room, either at the top or the bottom of your screen. Also, if your camera is on, we can see you. If you don't want us to see you, you can turn the camera off where it says video off, again, either at the bottom or the top of the screen. The idea of sustainable philanthropy is one of the most exciting developments to emerge from the Hebrew University. Leveraging private capital for social good allows one to create a more memorable giving experience that supports innovation and advancement. The idea has led to the creation of the Rimon Philanthropic Investment Initiative. Rimon Philanthropic Investment Initiative is a philanthropy-based venture creation engine dedicated to the advancement of meaningful improvements in health, social, and environmental well-being. The Rimon Initiative is a partnership between the Hebrew University, a world-leading interdisciplinary applied research institution, ISUM, the Hebrew University Tech Transfer Company, and one of the world's most prominent experts in translational innovation. In Hebrew, in HUGI, which stands for Hebrew University Jerusalem Israel Innovate, the University Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. To learn more about this unique program, we are joined by two leaders from the Hebrew University. First, Dr. Itzik Goldwasser is the CEO of ISUM and formerly serving as ISUM Senior Vice President of experience in the biopharmaceutical industry, spanning executive and research and development management roles in biotechnology, chemical, and biological drug development markets. Clive Tabachnik served as president of the American Friends of the Hebrew University. He's a member of the University International Board of Governors and the Executive Committee. A successful businessman and serial entrepreneur, Clive is the chairman of Datos Health, a Tel Aviv digital health company, director of Icogen, an early stage drug discovery company, and from 2010 to 2015, he was a director of Code and Theory, a leading New York digital agency which was acquired by Stagwell Group. Itzik, it gives me pleasure to welcome you and turn the program over to you.
Thank you very much, Benno. Before I'll put the presentation, I'll share it with you. I want to thank you. I'll tell about myself in a few seconds after I put the presentation, but this initiative started, I think 2 or 3 years ago, started by discussing, started by presentations, started by drafting brochures, etc. And in this year, I hope that this dream will come true. I started being the CEO of ISUM 1 year ago, exactly 1 year ago. It was January 2020 when the COVID started as well. We both started together. And immediately after starting, I started discussing with Ram Semo from the Hebrew University, which is here, and with Clive. And very fast, we understood that this is something that we're going to do no matter what, no matter COVID, no matter the situation in the world, but we're going to make it happen. And I hope that we did. I mean, after you'll hear my presentation, you'll hear about Hebrew University, you'll hear about ISUM. I hope that you'll be convinced that by donating money to this philanthropic initiative, actually you're donating money to serve the world. You're donating money in new technologies that are going to do good to the world by giving a small amount of money and affecting, hopefully, everyone. So I'll start my presentation. I'll share it right now. I hope everyone sees. If someone doesn't see, let me know, because I cannot see all of you. I can see almost only 5 of you now. Laura, do you see the presentation? Good, okay. So I'm very excited. I'm very excited because for me personally, being the CEO of ISUM is kind of achieving something that I started in the year 1989, when I started as a student at the Hebrew University. I have a first degree in chemistry, which I did at the Hebrew University. And I joined back the Hebrew University in 2010, about 20 years later, when I joined ISUM back after having executive roles in various startup companies. All of them were in the field of drug delivery. My second degree was in medicinal sciences, and my third degree at the Weizmann Institute was in biochemistry. I published few papers on drug delivery, and in particular on a long-acting insulin. I submitted 5 patents during my PhD, and that was when I started my first startup company at the Weizmann Institute. The VC invested $3 million in those patents that I was part of those inventors. And since then, I have decided that I'm going to dedicate my whole career in starting new startups that might do good to the world. I took licenses from the Weizmann Institute, took licenses from the Hebrew University. The last company that I established was in 2004. It was a technology based on Hebrew University patent from the lab of Professor Chezi Barenholz, the inventor of the dog seal, for those who doesn't know. I took her public a year later. It was a very successful IPO. And I was the president and the CEO of that company. It was for doing nasal vaccines, by the way, something which is very hot topic these days. I took her public a year later, and I was the president and the CEO of that company for 6 years until I joined ISUM. It was in 2010 when I joined, and now we're 11 years later, and today I'm the CEO of ISUM. So that's me. I'm going to go through the presentation that talks about mostly about ISUM's achievements in this very, very challenging year, which was 2020. I assume the questions, simply write them down or put them in the chat, and we can answer or have a discussion as soon as I finish. Actually, we're going to be seeing today a brand new presentation. You're the first one that are going to see this presentation. It was updated this morning with all the numbers from 2020. The whole look is different. I hope you like it. And I'll be very curious to hear later on also your opinion about the presentation. So I think I don't have to tell you about the Hebrew University. The Hebrew University has 6 campuses, more than 1,400 researchers, more than 24,000 students. It's one of the biggest universities. I think it's the biggest university in Israel. In Ben Gurion, they have 23,000 students. And we in ISUM are responsible to make sure that all these researchers that are conducting the best research probably in Israel and also around the world will be shown, will be presented outside to the industry in order to make this research to come true and to become drugs, fruits, new technologies, medical devices, etc. So ISUM was founded in 1964. It was the 3rd tech transfer company established in the world. And ISUM, as most of the tech transfer companies in the world, is the exclusive owner of all the intellectual property, of all the knowledge, of all the know-how that comes out of the Hebrew University. We are a for-profit organization, for-profit company. We're a private company. We have our own board of directors, okay? Most of them come from industry. some of them are managers of the Hebrew University. Actually, we have 8 board members, 5 of them come from industry and 3 of them from inside the university. The areas of expertise, as you probably know, the Hebrew University, they said, has 6 campuses: agriculture, food tech, veterinary, life science, medicine, dental medicine, pharmacology, humanities, physics, mathematics, everything you can think about. We manage the intellectual property and the know-how of all those areas. We have dedicated people in ISUM. Each one of them is a specialist in a specific area. I'll show you the personnel of ISUM shortly. So we are responsible to license or to start new companies related to all these fields. Numbers since ISUM was established are here, which are very impressive numbers. We've submitted more than 10,000 patents during the years. We signed more than 1,100 license agreements. We established 191 spin-off companies, and these patents are related to more than 3,000 new inventions. What is a tech transfer company? A tech transfer company, actually, the way I see it, is a bridge. It's a bridge that connects many arms, okay? Many arms that are responsible for taking technologies from the academia into the industry. We work with government. We work with the Israel Innovation Authority. We work, of course, with industry. We license out technologies to big companies, small companies. You'll see a short list very soon. We work with entrepreneurs, people that come, that want to invest in a certain technology and start their own startup company. We work with VCs, whether they're in Israel or outside of Israel. Of course, we collaborate with other academic institutions, as well with inside collaborations within the university. We believe in what we call merging technologies from all disciplines. Whether you have a researcher in biology, with a researcher from computer sciences, with a researcher from engineering, with a researcher from the medical school, and we try to combine all of them because that's where the world is going today, to combine all of them to develop new ideas. So, as I said, we're bridging from academia to industry and collaborating with all those mentioned here. How do we do it? We have various types of partnership models. The most popular one in a tech transfer is license agreements. We don't assign patents. We don't sell our knowledge, but we give license for use. Meaning, when a company or an entrepreneur or a startup wants to use a technology that comes out of the Hebrew University, we sign with them a license agreement. The license agreement talks about various terms of what happens if a certain technology becomes to be a product at the end, okay? So it talks about royalties that are going to be paid. It talks about milestone payments. It talks about sub-license fees. It talks about a research payment that is given to the university. So this is the most popular agreements that are signed in a tech transfer office. We also do sponsored research agreements. When a company has a certain problem, which they believe that the experts or the researchers or the brains in the academia can try to solve that problem, so they approach either the researcher or the tech transfer office with their problem, and they say, okay, this is the problem, we want to sponsor research and we want to have ownership on the data that comes out of that research, so that's sponsored research. We established also a new program in which we call EDGES, Enterprise Directed Research Platform, in which we invent the projects. We don't go to a researcher's laboratory and see what he's doing, but we ask the industry, what are your problems? And when they tell us, okay, we have a specific problem that we cannot do ABC, we go with a call for proposals to our researchers, we present them the problem, and we ask, okay, who wants to propose a solution or a research to solve the industry problem? And then we go back to the industry and we tell them, listen, these are the ideas, these are the plans that the researchers in the university have in order to solve the problems. and they decide which idea they like the most, which research plan they like the most, and they sponsor the research. And if the research is successful, they get to own the data or to license the technology. Of course, we start spin-off companies. I showed you before how many companies we established during the years. I'll show you the data about 2020. And we also sign master collaborations, usually with big companies. We have master collaborations with Procter & Gamble. We had master collaboration with Coca-Cola, with 3M, with Lockheed Martin, with big companies. I'll show it to you a bit later. Who does all this job, or all this work? So this is the structure of ISUM, okay? We have the business development people, okay, in which each one of them is an expert in a specific field, okay? And each one of them is responsible to do all these agreements that I just mentioned, especially the research and option agreements, the know-how license agreements, and the research and license agreements. So we have 5 experts, each one in a specific field. They all come from industry. They're all experienced in establishing startup companies, in signing license agreements from the other side, from the side of the companies. Now in ISUM, they're giving the licenses to those companies in order to develop new products. We have what we call the site unit. Site unit looks inside the university at the projects at the researchers lab and evaluate each one of the projects, each one of these 1,400 researchers that I showed you earlier. They evaluate the technology, in which state the technology is, whether we should submit a patent or not, whether we should look for a grant, whether we should look for an investor, or whether it's ready enough to do a license agreement with a partner. So we have the group that looks inside the technologies. We have the BD team that looks outside, that signs these agreements with academia. We have another team, which is one person, but she's very well experienced. She's already 15 years in ISUM. She's responsible, Ms. Karen Shachar, to sign all the service agreements. When the industry wants to sign a service agreement with a researcher in the university, whether it's a laboratory service or a research service, she's the person responsible. And she's also managing all the activities that we have with the Israel Innovation Authority. This is this IAA here. We have the finance the department. We have the alliance management. The person responsible is Mr. Yosef Haber. He's here in the crowd looking at the presentation as well. Yosef, you can say hi if I don't see you, but probably someone can see you there.
I'm here. Hello and good afternoon.
Good. Hi. And Yosef, I'll say it in the end, but Yosef will be your contact person. Yosef is the director of all the alliances, okay? He's the one that manages everything that is done after the agreements are signed. All the collaboration and the being in touch with those startup companies that we established, okay? Today, by the way, we have equity in more than 130 companies, okay? And he's the person that takes care of being in good relationship with all those startup companies, okay? He will be also the person that will take nice care of all of you that will be interested in knowing more about our startup companies, and you will have a direct route through him to know what's happening in ISUM with our companies. We will talk about it at the end. Of course, we have the legal department. We have Mr. Bob Trachtenberg, he's the general counsel. We have 2 more advocates that work with him. We have marketing, Ms. Leah Geffen. We have IT. And of course, we have the IP department. We submit all our patents by ourselves. Of course, we collaborate with all the big patent firms in Israel and around the world, because it's not very easy, you know, to manage more than 10,000 patents, but we manage. 2020, when it began, as I said, I started my new position as the CEO in January 2020, and then the COVID came. It was quite traumatic. Because I said to myself, oh my God, I mean, I'm a new CEO, I have to show good results. And now we have this COVID, people are at home, people are in quarantine, people are with other families that lost their jobs, that have their kids at home, and we have to manage all this very, very challenging company now. But it ended up being the best company ever in ISUM. Okay, from the point of view of number of startup companies that we have established, number of patents that we have filed, number of sponsored research agreements that we signed, and number of license agreements that we signed. There are other parameters as well, which were very good, but I will not show you all of them. But from the point of view of doing good to the university by presenting their best projects to the world, it was the best year of ISUM. Why I'm saying that, I think it connects to what I'm going to talk at the end in my two last slides about the Rimon initiative. This year, which was one of the challenging years all over the world, we have established 17 new startup companies. Okay, 17 is an extremely high number of companies in all fields. I will show you the companies in a few seconds. If we had money which we could invest in those companies this year, I'm sure they would do much better. I'm sure they would develop much faster. And I'm sure that all of you, which by the way, I don't know most of you, but I feel in a very friendly environment, most of you would be very, very pleased to see the technology that come out of the Hebrew University are doing so well to the world. So these are numbers from 2020. And this is beside everything that the Hebrew University was doing against COVID. You saw the publications, and I follow American friends in LinkedIn and in Facebook every day. So I see that you also published some of these activities, but you have to understand that beside doing all the research that the university conducts routinely, okay, all these new companies that we have established or all these new licenses, the capability of researchers, the capability of Israel being a startup nation to adapt itself to a certain situation while in the world you enter into a pandemic and you say, oh my God, we have a new virus, what do we do? I think that it was 3 or 4 weeks later in which at the Hebrew University we had 64 projects related to COVID-19. Okay, we have submitted in ISUM 15 new patents related to COVID in 1 month. Okay, we have submitted to the Israel Innovation Authority various amounts of projects because they went with a proposal to fund projects that come out of the academia in the field of COVID. Okay, and projects that were submitted by ISUM based on Hebrew University researchers, okay, received the highest amount of funding from the Israel Innovation Authority, okay? There were 20 projects, okay, that were submitted by 11 academic institutions. 7 out of them came from the Hebrew University, which is a huge number. The variety between faculties related to agreements that were signed in 2020, you can see it here in this pie. It's divided mostly between Faculty of Medicine, Faculty of Science, and Faculty of Agriculture. We've been very active this year in the Faculty of Agriculture. As you probably know, food tech is now being the new buzzword. People developing proteins out of many things. People developing meat from cells, etc., etc. Everything related to that topics is being also researched at the Hebrew University. We have established few companies based on these technologies. In the next slide, you can see the 17 companies that I mentioned that we started in 2020, okay? Whether they are in agtech, medtech, drug repurposing, life science, medical cannabis, 3D printing, you name it, okay? And as I said before, if we would have some more money or funds to invest, we would probably establish more companies or have a bigger stake in each one of these companies. This is a slide that shows our spin-out companies. Some of them are public, some of them are private. Some of them are traded in Tel Aviv. Some of them are traded in the States. I'm sure you can find some of them that you know. So we're very well involved, and as I said, Yosef is responsible to take care of our relationship with all of them. I mentioned earlier about master collaborations. This is a list of some of the big companies in which we have collaborated or collaborating today. We have a lot of collaboration this year with a Strauss incubator called The Kitchen. We have established there 2 new companies. One of them is called Better Juice. We are about to establish a new company now. The second one is called HPure, and we're about to establish a 3rd company with them. Some of the success stories, which I'm sure you all heard of, so I will not spend a lot of time. So you heard about the cherry tomatoes and the doxorubicin liposomes from the lab of Chezi Barinholtz, and the Exelon from the lab of Marta Winstock-Rosin. Mobileye, of course. I added here a few slides from few faculties just to show you that we are everywhere. We are in every field. We invest in every field. And this is the only university in Israel that has this biggest variety. We're the only university that has the Faculty of Agriculture in Israel. Okay, all these companies that you see here come from the Faculty of Agriculture: Kinoko and Savorit and Sufresca and Chickpea and Future Meat and Better Juice. Some of them were established this year. Some of them were established few years earlier. Agritech, so we have Aquinovo, Professor Berta Sivan, and we have Clasid and Gamma Search for measuring CBD and THC. Smart Resilient, Pilpel Seeds, a new company. In healthcare, again, many new companies. Nectin raised this year $15 million. LDS are talking about going public. Coal Plant is already a public company. New STEM is relatively a new company which is looking to raise money. Computer science, I think probably some of you recognize all these companies. We don't have this year, I don't think that we have a new company that comes from computer science. I want to mention that in ISUM, we have 2, what we call internal VCs. They're not exactly internal because the investors come from all over the world, but we have 2 VCs, one in the field of healthcare, the other one in the field of nanomaterials and nanotechnologies. Integra was established in 2012 by ISUM. Later on, other investors joined. The Rakach Nano Fund is a relatively new fund that was established 1.5 years ago. Integra already raised $40 million. The Rakach Nano Fund raised until now $6 million. And they help us to actually to cross the valley of death that some of you probably heard about. The valley of death is the place where a project is mature enough in which doesn't enable him to get more grant funds from NIH, from European funds, from the Israel Innovation Authorities, but it's not mature enough to do a license deal with industry. So they fall into what we call this valley of death, in which they need funds in order to mature the technology to be ready for license, but they're not in that stage yet. So we have established these two vehicles in order to support these projects to become companies or to be able to license out the technologies once they're mature enough, once they're ready. Okay, now I move to the most important issue that this is why we meet here, all of us, and it's the Rimon Philanthropic Investment Initiative. As I said, when I started my role as the CEO 1 year ago, Ram Semo connected me with Clive and told me about this idea that was already discussed a while ago by the previous CEO of ISUM, Dr. Yaron Danieli. But it wasn't probably ready then to come out to be presented to the public and say, okay, we're doing it. And why are we doing it? Because we really believe that this is, from my point of view, the best vehicle for a donor that donates his money to see that his money was really invested in something that will do good to the world. Okay? You're giving ISUM your money. ISUM is going to invest this money in projects which ISUM believes that are going to be blockbusters, unicorns, that are going to be good to the world. And hopefully they will become good to the world, they will do good to the world, and the income that will come afterwards from these new technologies that will become startups and hopefully big companies will be reinvested in new projects, new startups, new ideas that come out from the Hebrew University. So this is the idea of the Rimon Philanthropic investment initiative. And in this slide, we tried to present all the important facts or issues that are related to the fund. Okay, so regarding the establishment, I assume that all of you read it. It's a donation. It's a donation which is a tax-free donation, and someone here in the crowd can talk about it, I assume. We're going to start this fund at ISUM once we reach $500,000. Okay. These $500,000 are going to be managed by all those experts that I showed you earlier. All the people from ISUM, all of us are very well experienced. That's what we do every day when we come to work. And we're going to invest either in new startups that are established or very promising projects. Usually, I assume, I don't know yet, usually it will probably be less than 100,000 K per company or per project. The projects are coming from all over the university. As I showed you, we are active in any field you can think about, okay? So it will be health and agriculture and food and computer science and engineering and social science if we have projects, and material science, etc., okay? The partners, of course, are our shareholders, where all the science comes from, where all this best research comes from, which is the Hebrew University, ISUM as the tech transfer company, and Huji Innovate, which is the new center for innovation and entrepreneurship, which I hope you heard about, which is doing, I think, one of the best jobs in teaching students at the Hebrew University how to become investors, how to become entrepreneurs, and how to take a project and moving it from a project into a company. So we're going to look for the best projects all over and invest in order to make the best investment possible. Okay? What do you get as donors? As I said, first, from my point of view, you get to put your money in something that eventually might do good to the world. That's what you get to do. Okay? What do you get for that? You get for that the ability to know what's happening with other companies that are established in ISUM, okay? We wrote you non-confidential updates, and as I said, I still don't know how it will work. I still don't know how much work it will require. We at ISUM are doing it for free, are doing it because our shareholders are the Hebrew University, and we're doing it because we believe that that's the right way to do, and that's the right way to thank the donors of the Hebrew University. That's the only reason that we do it, okay? You're going to get the opportunity once we hear that one of our startup companies is raising money or is looking for their next round of investment. We will be able to update you and tell you, hey, listen, we know that this or that company is looking. We can match you with the CEO. We can put you together with the board. We can let you know if there are more details that we know. All that we can do for you just because we believe that that's the only way to do good to the world. And that was my presentation. And now, Clive, unless...
I'll add a little to what Itzik has so comprehensively laid out in this excellent presentation. So many of you are familiar with Yasum. I think this is the first time for some of you that you've really seen a 360-degree picture of Yasum and what they do. And I want to compliment Itzik on two things. One, the excellent job that he's done in very trying circumstances. And as you saw, the results for 2020 have been exceptional. And two, for picking up the ball that had lain, I would say, dormant on the Rimon initiative and helping us to get it to this point where we are ready to essentially raise funds for this at American Friends. For us at American Friends, a number of you also know that this has been one of my pet projects and ideas, in the sense of that we have to find different ways to position ourselves and to get philanthropic dollars in that are different from the traditional galas and honorary dinners, et cetera. And particularly if we're talking to newer generations of money, where impact and doing good for the world and measurable results are now key elements of getting philanthropic dollars in. This is one of a few key new initiatives that we're doing that will be able to appeal to these new donors, to our existing donors. It's a new way to give money. And again, the key word here is sustainable. So it's very debilitating and difficult for institutions, and it's a model that's not going to work for much longer, to go out every year and snore our money. We need more money every year. We're going to get money, et cetera. There's no reason why philanthropic donations should not be investments that give a return that can become self-sustaining on their own accord. And I'll just give you an example of essentially where this idea germinated for us, and it's kind of gives you a sense of what can be achieved. About 3.5 years ago, we received a donation that was designated to invest in another one of Yasum's innovation funds, Agri-Innovation, the Agri-Tech Innovation Fund. That $1 million, based on the current imputed values, because none of these companies have been monetized yet, but the current imputed values of the Agri-Innovation investments is worth on paper, and again, I stress on paper, it's unrealized, but on paper it's worth more than $3 million. So you can see how a investment like this could really generate significant returns and can by itself become self-perpetuating, and as Itzik says, reinvested and reinvested and reinvested, and it can become a significant amount of money. He also mentioned some very interesting companies that have come out. The most recent news, some of you know, and by the way, Yasum has a small stake in that, is the Future Meats company, which just raised $26 million to build a plant in Israel. And as you all know, alternative meats and alternative meat companies have become very, very significant financial entities in their own right, both publicly and privately. And we think that this could be one of our next blockbuster companies, again, founded a few years ago by Kobe Nachmias at the university, fully fledged, spin out from the university from A to Z, that's going to be making big waves in the world, both financially and in industrially. So we have this vehicle, and this vehicle essentially is a direct donation vehicle for you. In other words, you give money to Rimon, it's designated to the areas which Itzik said. You get your full tax deduction. It's a fully 501c3 tax deductible donation. There are no there are no extra bells and whistles that come to you as a part of it. However, we have committed, as Itzik said, to show you opportunities, to keep you in the loop, to get you involved with these startups, because who knows where they go and what they do. And it's certainly our hope that some of these seeds, and these are really very early seeds, so we can get some significant stakes and we can accelerate development of companies, can turn into really big trees and valuable assets for the university. So again, hopefully exponential growth in the investment, and hopefully benefits to you from doing good for the world as donors, seeing your investments grow into substantial and world-leading and world-changing companies, and potentially getting you guys involved, further down the line in helping these companies grow, both financially or with expertise or with contact that you may bring. And we think this is a virtuous circle. So, you know, I encourage all of you, I welcome all of you to the Rimon Founders Initiative, Founders Circle. And, you know, we'll open up for questions now. We also have Alyssa Fishman, CFO of American Friends, on the call to answer any financial tax questions you may have to the best of her ability. But I'm going to open it up now to the floor. Laura, please moderate and let's take it from there.
Great. So if anyone, you want to raise your virtual hand or ask a question, we are ready for some discussion. Gail, are you ready to ask a question?
You're muted, Gail.
My own, okay, there we go. Now I forgot the question. Oh, how do you determine how large you create this entity? And it's sort of like a granting situation, but it's a philanthropic contribution. How do you decide how much of that corpus of money goes to each one of the companies that you've designated as worthy?
Okay, how do I decide? It really depends on each company that we establish. If we're talking about companies now and not projects, okay, because projects is more interesting and the calculation might be even more complicated, but not always. Well, okay, I'll start with the project. If we want to invest in a project in which we believe that that project can become a company that can have a real technology, etc., it's easier. We have to calculate how much money that project needs for research, okay? And then we can decide, okay, we want to invest X amount of dollars in that project because that's what they need in order to cross that value of death and become ready for licensing it out. So that's the easiest part. Where we're talking about establishing a new startup company, it really depends on how many investors we have around and what are the assets that the new company needs at this specific moment, okay? Let's say that we're talking now about a company that would like to develop a new system for screening, for multi-screening of COVID-19 tests, okay? And we know that we have an investor that would like to invest $500,000 in order to start this company, okay? But we also know, okay, there are a few factors. We also know, for example, that that company, in order to make sure that that screening test is really reliable and repeatable and it works exactly the same as other common tests known today, still needs to do A, B, C, and D. And for that, they need an investor which might be a little bit higher than $500,000 in order to make their value to become much higher after they prove this concept. Let's say that today they worth $1 million, okay? That's a rule of thumb. Okay, if you invest $500,000 and we bring a technology, so the day the company is established is around a value of around $1 million. So we calculate and say, okay, we're going to invest $100,000, so we might get equity of 10% in that company, okay, which might lead to that the technology will be ready in about 1 or 2 years, and then the value of that company might be, instead of $1 million, let's say $12 million, okay? So we do all these kind of calculations about what's the best place to invest, what's the highest equity that we're going to get, and what's the chances that in a short period of time, the valuation of that company will become much higher, or what's the chances for that company to become public, to do an IPO, or maybe an exit, which is more unusual in the field of biotech, but it happens as well.
And Gail, I would say, obviously, the bigger the fund, the more opportunities it has. So at $500,000, you've probably got a 3 to 5 universe of opportunities. At $1 million, you've got double that, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and I would say that when I received the first brochure of the Rimon initiative, which was 1 year ago, when I looked at it, it said that the minimum investment will be $1 million, not $500,000. Okay, and I really believe that the more we have, we will be able to invest either more in a specific very, very good company, or we will be able to spread it in many more companies. And you know, this is the rule of the big numbers here. I mean, we know that most of the startup companies do not succeed eventually, but those that succeed overcome all those that didn't succeed. Okay, so the more we spread our investments in as more startup companies possible, okay, the chances to succeed are higher. On the other hand, if I have an investor that comes with $1 million, investing $25,000 in a company will give me nothing. So I will not invest $25,000. This is why I have to invest a relatively higher amount of money.
Clive, it's Benno. Could you clarify for the audience exactly how a donor will be able to invest in startup companies down the road?
So, look, Itzik can also talk a little bit more about this, but as he said, look, we are seeing dozens and dozens of opportunities in Yasum every year, from licensing to spin-offs to startups to projects that are pre-commercial. And a lot of these, some of these companies have investors already and are funded beforehand. Some of them don't. And the ones that are looking for investors, the ones that are looking for further investments, are the ones that Itzik is going to collate for us. And either we'll have a website access or we'll have direct presentations. But there will be a mechanism where those companies that, again, have been deemed by Yasum to be worthwhile for investment, that don't have committed investments, will be brought to the public, and we'll be among the first to see those opportunities. And then each one of you individually can say, look, I've been interested in putting some money into this, and you can do your own due diligence and work with Yasum on those. But there is a deal pipeline and a deal flow here that is substantial. And a part of that deal pipeline and deal flow will have opportunities where they do not have money, or they're looking for extra money, or they're looking for investment from the startup. And those companies and those opportunities will be those that Yasum will bring out and show to us as potential investment opportunities for anyone who's in the Rimon founder circle.
Thank you.
I think, Benno, did that answer your question? Because I thought that what you were asking is how a donor can invest. But if it's clear for you, then, because it's two different things, two separate things, and it's the same person with two different hats, okay?
Right. So you can clarify further.
No, so what I wanted to say is the following. In the Rimon philanthropic initiative, you're all donating money, okay? You're not getting anything out of that beside doing good to the world in a way that you will know exactly what was done with your money, okay? But when you change your hat and you want to invest in a company that comes out of the Hebrew University, you can invest in a company as an investor and not as a donor.
So do you, as a contributor to Rimon, get a right of first refusal, or to invest, or an opportunity to invest, or
Okay, I'll answer. You're not getting right of first refusal, because if you're donating money, you cannot get any specific right like a first refusal. What you're getting is, as I said in the beginning, and since he's here, I will say his name again, you're getting Yosef Habel from Yasum, which is here with us, okay? And Yosef's job will be, first of all, to update all of you what was done or what is done with the money that you donated, okay? For example, you will have a presentation that will say, in the last year or in the last 6 months or in the last whatever, we have invested out of the Rimon fund X amount of dollars in company Y and Z, and company Y and Z does this, and that, and we will bring you the CEO that might give a presentation, and you will know where the donated money went from. That's one thing. The other thing is that when we get to know, which is not always that we get to know, because we establish companies, they become private companies, they have their own boards, they have their own management. We don't always know what's going on in these companies, but when we do know, because in most of them we're shareholders, so we do know. In some of them we're board members, so we do know. And when we get to know that specific companies, not related to what was even donated, not related to the companies from Rimon, are looking to raise new funds. So we will be able to let you know, to send you an email and say, hi, Richard, we know that Company X is looking to raise $3 million. Company X is doing A, B, C, and D.
So
Okay.
you will be able, or you will?
The moment that we know, we will.
Okay. My second question, and I'm sorry I joined, unfortunately I had another commitment, I joined a little late. Is there a minimum, which there should be, to contribute to Rimon to avail yourselves of these potential other opportunities?
The minimum is $25,000, Dick.
Is there an annual thereafter? It's just,
No, this is a one-off. This is a pilot. We'll see how it goes, but it's a minimum of 25,000 to get it going. And we want to get a pool of $500,000 to close and to get the initiative going.
And by the way, my hope is that I'll be in ISUM for many, many years, and this will be repeated for many, many years. But again, as Clive said, this is a pilot, and I hope that we'll start with a pilot of, let's say, $2 million, and let's see next year what happens.
We do have a couple questions coming in through the chat. Our first question: of the companies you look into, what percentage of them do you decide to actually invest in? And do the principals of the companies also invest in the company? Do the principals of the companies you also invest in the companies you decide in?
What do you mean okay, first of all, up to today, ISUM doesn't invest money in companies because ISUM doesn't have money to invest in companies, okay? ISUM gives the company the knowledge. ISUM gives the company the license of the technology. The license is the only thing that the company has. This is why ISUM gets equity for the license that we give. Investors come out from ISUM, okay? Usually an investor comes, or an entrepreneur comes, or a VC comes and say, listen, we want to invest and start a new company. We don't invest money. What we're planning to do from now on, assuming we will have the Rimon initiative, okay, we're planning not only to get equity by giving license of the technology, but to get also equity by investing money. Okay, so today we don't invest money in companies. As ISUM, we do invest as, let's say, one of our VCs, etc. But as ISUM, we don't even invest money.
Okay, our next question, maybe Alyssa Fishman can also chime in. How do these donations qualify tax deductible if they transform into investments for for-profit companies?
I think that question's been answered. Thank you.
Great. Okay, and our next question, what entity are we donating to in the US? What in turn is the relationship with Rimon?
Alyssa, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the donation is going to, it would be like any donation that you're making to American Friends. You're making the donation to American Friends, and then American Friends is making the grant to the Hebrew University and ISUM. And Rimon is really is the name of what we're calling this initiative, but it's ISUM.
Let me just correct you. The donation will be, as far as I understand, the donation will be as any other donation that you donate to the Hebrew University. The Hebrew University, through an agreement that they will have with ISUM, are going to either loan the money to ISUM or give this money in one way or another, in which we're now checking, to ISUM, okay? But you're donating money to the Hebrew University as any donation, okay? There is no difference. And I don't know, Ram is also here. If you want Ram Semo is here from
it will be specifically designated to Rimon, just like if you gave money for a scholarship and you say, I'm designated for scholarships in humanities, your money would be designated for scholarships in humanities. In this case, you're giving money and it's going to be designated for Rimon, and then all the other bells and whistles in terms of reporting and the Rimon Circle and all the other stuff will come to you as part of being a donor for the benefit of Rimon.
I have a question. So if you make a donation to Hebrew University, unless it's $25,000, it cannot then turn around and grant it to Rimon. Is that what you said? Is that what happens?
So yeah, we are setting a minimum because, again, it's in order to make this a manageable process with our donors, and because there are going to be certain advantages, again, there's certain follow-ups that we're going to have to give to our Rimon investors or our Rimon donors. We want to try and, again, if we had 500,000 people giving $1, it becomes unmanageable. So basically, we want to say, look, so we want to keep the circle relatively small, and just like typically if you invest in an investment fund, there's typically a minimum. We thought we put this minimum on it because it makes it a bit more manageable for us, rather than having, as I say, hundreds of potential donors here. We'd like to keep it a bit more exclusive and make it more within the typical kind of framework that a fund investor would be looking at.
I have
Michael.
one. Go ahead.
Peter?
Go ahead, Laura, unless you're finished.
Yes, the question. So this investment, we give money to AFHU. They invested in this fund, and AFHU basically does not keep this on their books other than a deduction. So the investment in the philanthropic fund is held on Hebrew University's books, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's okay.
Yes.
So the accounting is simple.
So in other words, Yasum will receive shares or receive royalties or receive some sort of benefit for investing in those companies. Hopefully that benefit then translates into a growth in equity or growth in the investment. Yasum will eventually monetize that investment and then will reinvest that money in future Yasum projects.
Either Yasum or the university.
Correct.
I mean, once the money comes back, we will have to agree whether we give it back to the university to invest in projects or if we invest in new initiatives.
Okay.
Peter?
So I just want to be clear. The hook for some people will be the ability to look at new company deal flow to invest in for real, as opposed to the designated donation into the fund. Is the deal flow for that available to the investors in the fund simply what is seen by Yasum and Yasum's companies that are supported through this, or does it include everything that's coming through Hebrew University in terms of potential startups, whether they are monitored and to some extent participated in by Yasum or not?
Okay, Peter, 1 second. I will answer something and then Clive can add. Again, when investors invest in startup companies that come out of the Hebrew, all the startup companies that come out of the Hebrew University come out of Yasum, okay? Yasum is the exclusive owner of all the intellectual property of the university. The university doesn't start new startup companies. It's Yasum that starts these new startup companies, okay? We start new startup companies and they have, as I said before, their own board members, their own management, okay? And they start their life as any startup company, okay? Then suddenly they start looking for new funds, a new raise of money, okay? Sometimes they come to us and say, listen, we're looking to raise money. Sometimes we hear it because we sit in board meetings and they say, do you happen to know potential investors that might be interested in investing in this new company, okay? Another way to look into it is if you simply go to Yasum's website, okay? I didn't show it in the presentation. Yasum's website is yasum.co.il. I think it's one of the best websites that a technology transfer company has. It's a live website. It is being updated almost on a daily basis. All the new technologies are in the website. All the technologies that are available for license are in the website. Our new startups, you go to startups, you press click, you'll see today 36 startups, okay? And also you can look at our researchers, etc. So if you're looking for an investment, you can also approach us voluntarily and say, listen guys, I looked at company X, which was established by Yasum, and I'm interested to know whether this company X is looking for a new investment or when it will be looking for a new investment. Okay, Future Meat just raised few tens of millions dollars 2 days ago. Okay, companies are raising money all the time. Splicers raised this year $15 million. Nectin raised this year, I don't remember how much, $16 million. Companies that come out of ISUM raise money all the time. Okay, when we know about it, we can, of course, we will let you know. But you can also find out by yourself, okay, by looking into the website or by knowing company X or Y, okay, and then come to us and say, listen, I'm interested to know more about a specific company. We'll be more than happy to share with you the information. This is why Clive said that it's very difficult to manage, let's say, 500,000 people that everyone will donate $1, because if we will get 500,000 people sending us emails about we want to know more, it becomes a little bit difficult because we have to do our job, okay? This is why we said it will be 25,000. So assuming it will be 20 people that will donate this money, and that's an amount of people that we can manage.
Okay, let me stop you there. I know Kobe, okay?
You know what? You know Kobe?
Kobe, okay? I know the company.
Which one? He has few of them. You have Tissue Dynamics, you have Future Meat.
Future Meat company that we're talking about.
Because you have few of them, by the way, and Tissue Dynamics now is raising money, by the way.
Right, so you're saying right now that he is raising money for Future Meat, or that he has raised money.
Mm-hmm.
If I had known that, I might have been interested in investing.
Good.
So,
Okay.
so the question then becomes, that's outside of Rimon, but it's in your ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you then help me to become aware, without me having to know to talk to Kobe because he's raising money, that that's potentially an opportunity on the private side that you may help me look at because I'm involved in this fund? That's the question.
So that's what I said. When Rom Shuk is the CEO of Future Meat, I don't know if you know him as well. Rom Shuk is the CEO of Future Meat. Before they start raising money, they come to us and say, listen, do you know investors that might be interested in investing in the company? The answer of Yosef will be, yes, I can show it to few investors that might be interested. And then he sends you, Peter, an email and says, listen, Future Meat is planning on raising money. Do you want to hear more?
That's what I want. That's what I want everybody on this call to understand. That's the way it would work.
Yes, as long as Future Meat talks with me and tells me that they want to raise money.
Right, that's the example. That's the way it would play out. Okay.
I think we have time.
I have a.
Oh, I was just say, I think Gary had a question.
Yes, thanks. I'm trying to understand whether the plan involves strictly investments that are in an adjunct to investments in which you've out-licensed technology, or are you looking at this as sort of an opportunity for Rimon to make equity investments in entities that you didn't necessarily directly weren't involved directly in their founding or their startup technology?
Your question is whether we're going to use money from Rimon to invest in second rounds of companies that were established in the Hebrew University?
Oh, that's one question, and whether or not you're going to potentially invest in companies that were not established at Hebrew University.
No. For that question, the answer is no. We deal only with companies that come out of the Hebrew University. We have more than enough. And we start, by the way, new companies more than any other academic institution in Israel. So no, we deal only with the Hebrew University. That's our mandate, okay? ISUM is fully owned by the Hebrew University, and we're very, very proud of that. About investing in second rounds, usually second rounds are looking for higher amounts of money, and investing something like $15,000, $100,000, usually those that are looking for investors will not even, they will tell me, listen, I don't want to collect, it's like the Rimon Fund. I don't want to collect investors that each one of them will give me 100,000 when I'm trying to raise 10 million. So the probability is very low that we will invest in second rounds. But I don't know, I'm being maybe too optimistic, and usually I'm not too optimistic, but I'm being too optimistic. And I think to myself that if this pilot here will be successful, I hope that next year we will have not 500 or maybe 1 million, maybe we will have 2 or 3 or 5, and then we can talk about that as well. Because then I will tell you, listen, there is a second round of Future Meet. Let's invest $500,000 in that second round because Future Meet is a blockbuster. Today, I don't have the budget for it.
It might be worthwhile for Benno to just chime in here and explain to everybody his experience at Case Western with a similar type of fund that was established and how it's grown.
This is a fund. There's a committee that I chair for the medical school at Case Western Reserve University, where philanthropic funds help young scientists do the critical experiment that determines whether the discovery has commercial potential or not. Using philanthropic funds, the return has been 10 to 1. So that's why when Clive spoke to me about Rimon, I was so enthusiastic, and my wife and I decided to support it immediately because I've seen what philanthropic funds can do based on the council that I chair for Case Western Reserve University Medical School.
I have a question. By the time it's all said and done, how much equity does Yasum end up after all the different rounds of fundraising? What typically is the percentage you own?
Usually very low amounts of shares because we are being diluted every round. Okay, we don't invest, Yasum, as I said in the beginning. We own very low amount of shares in each one of the companies, but we have equity, as I said, in 130 of them. So, you know, when we had equity in Mobileye, we had, I think, 1.5%. It was a huge amount of money.
Great. Were there any last questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, I have one last question. Don't you get license fees for getting equity? Don't you get license fees from all of these creations?
Okay.
And I just want to add, after this question, I think Maury had a question, and then we'll close up after that.
Okay, Vic, if you'd like, I can explain to you the whole idea of giving, of doing license agreements. But yes, there are a few ways to get funds back. Okay, the way that we're talking here in Rimon is to get money back out of having equity.
I understand that.
But, yeah, but yes, when we license a technology, we assume in the Hebrew University and the researcher gets money back out of the licensed technology that we give. Of course, that's
you get it every year. Don't you get it every year that the technology is in use?
Well, no. First of all, depends. First of all, you need that the technology will become a product. We have only few. You know, we have 2 drugs in the Hebrew University, Exelon and Doxil. So you need a technology to become a product, and then you get royalties every year until the patent expires.
Right.
Okay. Now, usually in a drug, you know, a lifetime of a patent is 20 years. You finish developing a drug usually 12 or 13 years after you've patented it. So you have 7 years of getting royalties. Usually it's a lot of money. Yes, but that's the case.
Maury, did you have a question?
I did indeed. Thank you. My question is, are foundations qualified for this kind of investment? Have you looked into that?
Lisa.
I would say offhand, there's no objection to a foundation investing because it is a charitable contribution.
No, not to the 25,000. The subsequent investment.
Depends upon what type of foundation you have.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen foundations, by the way, investing, Maury, in, and I can just talk from specific personal experience. For example, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation invested in a drug, was a blockbuster drug. They made a ton of money. I mean, it basically transformed. It was something like a $10 billion type of return. And they're using their foundation right now to invest directly into new drug developments, everything around cystic fibrosis and related diseases. So I've seen that happen, and I guess it depends on the chart of the foundation, but there's nothing to obviate a foundation from becoming an investor in something that's related, let's say, to their overall mission in life. So Cystic Fibrosis Foundation has this mission to help fight the disease. And if they do it in a direct investment in something that can make them a profit, as long as it's going to help fight the disease, they do it.
You know, we at the Gilbert Foundation, and we're a public foundation, we have about $25 million of these types of investment, whether it's venture capital, startups, private equity, or whatever. So with a private foundation, there are other limits. So you really ought to talk to your tax advisor. But your private foundation also invests its assets in stocks and bonds. So offhand, it wouldn't seem to be any limitation, but nevertheless, you should check.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter?
Yes, I'd like to thank Clive and Itzik for sharing their experience and their time with us. I thought this was very well done, and hopefully people have gotten a good grasp of what's available and what the goals are to accomplish. It's certainly a groundbreaking program for Hebrew University. It allows any of us to get involved from the start, which I think is very exciting. You get a front row seat to not only philanthropy, but all sorts of other exciting new breakthroughs and technologies and companies. So it's an investment not only in Hebrew University, but in Israel and for all of us. And I hope that you'll join in and contact Laura if you are interested to pursue this. I have, Benno has, there are a number of other people that have already committed to this, and we're very, very excited about it. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody, and it was a pleasure meeting you, and I hope that next time we'll meet in person in the States or hopefully in Israel.
Thank you, Itzik.
Thanks, Itzik.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.